You put your hand on the wrong old man. The young man who said it couldn't have been 25. He stood between the fuel pumps with his uniform still creased from the iron, and behind him the whole street had gone quiet in a way I had not heard since a very different country, a very long time ago. Officer Vance still had his hand raised. My glasses were lying on the concrete, and underneath the ringing in my ears, I heard engines. Not one, not two, a column of them, downshifting as they turned onto Delmore Street. 12 minutes. That was all it took for my quiet little life to end, and for something else to begin. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back 3 weeks, to a Tuesday morning when the biggest problem I had was a leaking gutter. My name doesn't matter much to the world. To the base outside town, it apparently mattered a great deal, though I did not know how much until that Tuesday started falling apart. I am 68 years old. I spent 31 years in the Army, most of them as a command sergeant major, and when I retired I did what a lot of us do. I came home, I bought a small house on a street where I grew up, and I tried to become nobody in particular. For a while it worked. That Tuesday I was on my front porch with a cup of coffee gone cold, listening to my grandson's voice on the phone. Malik is 11. His mother, my daughter Renee, passed 2 winters ago, and since then it has been the two of us. He was at school, calling on the counselor's phone the way he sometimes did, just to hear a familiar voice before the bell. "Grandpa," he said, "you're still coming Saturday, right? To the game. Wouldn't miss it." I told him. "I'll be the loud one." "You're always the loud one." I laughed and he laughed, and for a moment the gutter and the cold coffee and everything else did not exist. When we hung up I sat there looking at the empty end of the porch where his bike leaned, and at the drawing taped inside the front window that he made when he was 7, 2 stick figures holding hands under a lopsided sun. I had never taken it down. That is the thing you have to understand about me before the rest happens. I was not looking for a fight. I was a tired man raising a boy trying to keep a roof from leaking. I had that leak fixed in my head as the whole of my week. I was wrong. My nephew Terrence pulled into the driveway around 10. Terrence is my late brother's son, 41, always in a suit that fit him 3 years and 1 belt size ago. He works for a development company called Halloran and Reeve, the people putting glass boxes where the old mill used to be. He hugged me the way people hug when they are about to ask for something. "Uncle Eli," he said, "you look good. You sleeping okay?" "I sleep fine." "You remembering to take the pills? The heart ones?" I looked at him. "Terrence, you did not drive across town to count my pills." He had papers. He always had papers now. He spread them on my kitchen table and started talking numbers, and the number he wanted me to hear was large. Halloran and Reeve wanted my street. Not just my house. The whole block. They had most of it under contract already. I was the holdout, me and Mr. Haddad who ran the gas station on the corner. "It's generous, Uncle Eli. More than generous. You could get a nice place with an elevator, no stairs, close to Malik's school." "I like my stairs," I said. "They keep me honest." Something crossed his face then, and I did not read it right at the time. It looked like worry. Later I would learn it was fear, and that the fear was not for me. He left the papers on the table. As he backed out of the driveway, he said a thing that stuck to me like a burr. "Just think about the boy, okay? Think about what's best for him. What a judge would think is best." A judge. That word had no business in a conversation about gutters and glass boxes. But I let it go. That was my first mistake. Letting things go because they were uncomfortable to pick up. Here is what I did not know that Tuesday. 2 weeks earlier, somebody had called the county about me. An anonymous concern, they called it. A welfare check. A patrol car had come by while Malik was at school, and a polite young officer had stood on my porch and asked if I was managing all right, if I ever got confused, if the boy was safe. I had answered him honestly, a little insulted, and he had left. I filed it away as a mix-up. It was not a mix-up. It was the first move in a game I did not know I was playing. That officer's name was Vance. Corey Vance. He had transferred into our department 8 months before from a city 300 miles away, and the men at the VFW who knew such things said he had left that city under a cloud. His partner there had been killed. Shot at a traffic stop that went wrong. Vance had been in the passenger seat. He had walked away without a scratch, and he had not walked right since. I am telling you this not to excuse him. I am telling you because a man who slaps an old veteran at a gas station is not born that morning. He is built, piece by piece, out of things nobody looked at closely enough in time. When I finally understood Corey Vance, I did not hate him less, but I understood him more, and that turned out to matter. The week moved on. Wednesday I fixed the gutter. Thursday I baked. Badly. Because Malik's birthday was Sunday, and I had promised him a cake with his name on it in blue. Friday I went to the VFW and played dominoes with men who could still count better than they could walk. And in a folder in my truck, riding on the passenger seat like a second heartbeat, I carried the most important paper I had ever signed. Guardianship. Permanent. Renee had named me in her will, but the county wanted it made formal, sealed, unbreakable, so that no one could ever come along and question who Malik belonged to. I had the signed papers. All I had to do was file them at the courthouse and pay the fee, and that was Saturday's errand, right after I picked up the cake. I want you to hold onto that folder in your mind, because that folder is what got me slapped. Saturday came bright and cold. Malik had a sleepover at his best friend Dion's house, so the morning was mine. I put on my old field jacket, the green one, worn soft as a blanket, and I drove into town. First the bakery, where the cake sat in its white box with Malik written in blue frosting, a little crooked. Exactly right. I set it on the passenger seat next to the folder. Then I needed gas, so I pulled into Haddad's on the corner of Delmore and Fifth, the same station that had refused to sell to Halloran and Reeve. Amir Haddad has run that station for 20 years. He waved at me through the window. There were 2 other cars at the pumps. And parked off to the side, filling a big fuel can, was a young man in Army combat uniform, a soldier with a guard convoy patch on his shoulder and the name Cole on his chest. I noticed him the way old soldiers always notice young ones. I did not speak to him. I just filled my tank. That is when the patrol car pulled in. Officer Vance got out with the particular tightness of a man who has been driving all night with his own thoughts. Later I learned he had worked a double, that he had gotten a call that morning from his mother about the anniversary of his partner's death, that he was running on no sleep and worse memories. None of that was mine to know at the pump. All I saw was an officer walking toward me with his jaw set. "Sir, I need you to step over here." "Something wrong, officer?" "We got a report of a man matching your description. Confused. Possibly a danger. I need to see some ID. A man matching my description." I have thought about that phrase 1,000 times since. There was no report. There was a machine that had been set in motion 2 weeks earlier, and I had just driven into its path. "My wallet's in my jacket," I said, and I reached for the inside pocket. I want to be precise about this because it is the whole hinge of the story. I reached for my wallet. My wallet sits in the left inside pocket of that field jacket, and next to it that morning was the folder. Folded once, thick, the guardianship papers I did not want to leave in a truck at a gas station. So when my hand went in, it came out with the folder first, papers spilling loose, and I fumbled, reaching back in for the wallet underneath. To me, it was an old man dropping his paperwork. To a sleepless officer who had watched his partner die reaching into a jacket, it was a threat. He did not draw his weapon. I will give him that much. What he did was worse in a way and smaller. His open hand came across my face so fast I never saw it. It was not a punch. It was a slap, the kind you give a thing you have decided is beneath you, and the sound of it cracked across the whole station. My glasses flew off. I stumbled back against the pump. The papers scattered across the wet concrete. Malik's name on one of them, my daughter's signature on another. I did not fall. 68 years old, and I kept my feet, though the world tilted and my ears filled with that high familiar ring. For one long second, nobody moved. Then the young soldier put his fuel can down. "Sir," Cole said to me, not to the officer. "Are you all right?" Vance rounded on him. "Stay out of this. Get back in your lane." But Cole was not looking at Vance anymore. He was looking at me, and then he was looking at the scattered papers, and then at the worn name tape barely visible on the collar of my old jacket where 31 years had faded almost everything to gray. And I watched a young man's face go from concern to confusion to something I can only call recognition. "Say that name again," he said quietly. "Excuse me," Vance said. Cole crouched, picked up my glasses, and handed them to me with two hands the way you hand a thing to someone you respect. Then he read the tape on my collar, and I saw his lips move. "Monroe." He stood up straight. "Your command, Sergeant Major Monroe." I did not answer. I was busy trying to make the pump stop moving. "Elijah Monroe," he said, louder now, and there was something building in his voice. "There's a building named after you. On post. Monroe Hall. Every soldier who comes through the Leadership Academy on that base learns your name in their first week. My drill sergeant made us memorize what you did in the valley." Vance's face had started to change. "I don't care if there's a statue of him." He was reaching. He was reaching for his glasses and a folder, sir. Cole's voice had gone flat and cold in the way of a man who has stopped being polite. "And you slapped a decorated veteran across the face at a gas station. In front of witnesses." He looked around. Amir was standing frozen in the doorway with his phone up, filming. The two other drivers were filming. 3 phones all pointed at the same shame. Then Cole did the thing that changed everything. He keyed the radio clipped to his vest. I did not hear the whole thing. I caught pieces. His unit call sign, Delmore in 5th, and then a sentence that made Officer Vance go pale. "Be advised, Command Sergeant Major Monroe is on the ground, assaulted by local PD. Requesting the colonel be notified immediately. He is going to want to know. You have to understand what was happening 2 miles away for the next part to make sense." That morning, a guard convoy was staging on the highway outside town for their annual training rotation. 40 vehicles, a long column of trucks and transports, engines idling in the cold while the officers sorted paperwork. Staff Sergeant Wesley Cole had peeled off to top up a fuel can, which is the only reason he was standing in Haddad's when I got slapped. Pure chance. Or maybe not chance. My daughter used to say there is no such thing as an accident, only appointments we did not know we had made. And riding with that convoy, doing a readiness inspection because he liked to be seen with his soldiers, was Brigadier General Anthony Calder. I need to tell you about Calder because without him the trucks are just theater. 40 years ago, in a valley I still visit in my sleep, a 19-year-old private named Tony Calder was pinned in a burning vehicle while everyone with sense was moving the other way. I was his sergeant. I went back. I pulled him out with my hands, and the burns on my forearms that I have worn my whole life since are from the door handle I would not let go of. He lived. He grew up. He stayed in. And every year since, on the anniversary, I get a card. Just a card. It always says the same thing. I have not forgotten. I never will. Tell me if you ever need anything. I never needed anything. I never asked. In 40 years I never once called in that debt, because a debt like that is not really a debt. It is a thing you carry together. So when the call came up the chain, garbled and urgent, that Command Sergeant Major Elijah Monroe was on the ground at a gas station, it reached a general who had spent 40 years waiting to be told I needed something. He did not send a car. 12 minutes after the slap, I heard the engines. I want you to picture it because I will never forget it. I was sitting on the curb by then, Amir pressing a wet paper towel to my cheek, Cole standing over me like a wall between me and Officer Vance. And around the corner of Delmore came the first truck. Then the second. Then the third. Big 5-ton transports, olive drab, engines growling, and they did not race in with any drama. They rolled in slow and deliberate, and one by one they took up positions around the block. 15 of them by the time it was done, parked with the precision of men who do everything on a line, sealing off the intersection the way you would seal off something precious. And then the soldiers got out, not with weapons raised, not shouting. They dismounted, formed up on the sidewalk in two ranks, and they came to attention. For me, an old man on a curb with a paper towel on his face. Officer Vance had called for backup somewhere in there. 2 more patrol cars had arrived, and the officers stood by their doors, hands near their belts, looking at 15 military trucks and 60 soldiers standing silent at attention, and not one of them knew what to do with their hands. The last vehicle to arrive was not a truck. It was a plain green sedan, and out of it stepped a man with a star on each shoulder and gray in his hair where I remembered black. 40 years is a long time, but I knew that walk. I had taught that walk to hold steady under fire. General Calder crossed the whole station in silence. He stopped in front of me, and then a brigadier general of the United States Army got down on one knee on the wet concrete of a gas station, so that his eyes were level with mine. "Sergeant Major," he said, and his voice was not steady at all. "It took me 40 years to return your call. I'm sorry it took a day like this." I did not have words. I put my hand on his shoulder, the way I had done in the valley, and that was answer enough. Then he stood up and he turned, and the kneeling man became the general. "Who did this?" he said. It was not a question. Nobody answered, so I answered. "He did," I said, and I nodded at Corey Vance, who looked at that moment less like an officer of the law and more like a man watching the ground open up under him. "But before anybody does anything, General, I need you to hear me. All of you. Because there is a version of the next 10 minutes where a lot of people feel good and nothing gets better. I have seen that version. I am not interested in it. You could have heard a coin drop on that whole block. Now, I could tell you that I said what I said because I am a wise and gentle man. That would be a lie. The truth is uglier and more useful. I wanted to destroy Corey Vance. I wanted it in my hands and my chest and the stinging half of my face. I had spent a life being told to move along, to be less, to be careful with my dignity in public because somebody might take offense at me simply having any. And here, finally, was the whole weight of the United States Army lined up behind me, waiting to be pointed like a weapon. That is exactly why I could not point it. Because I have watched what happens to men who finally get power after a lifetime without it, and it is almost never mercy. And there was a boy at a sleepover across town whose whole idea of what a man is he had gotten from watching me. Malik was going to hear about this day for the rest of his life. He was going to see the videos. And I decided, sitting on that curb, that when he watched them, he was going to see his grandfather stand up, not get even. But I was not finished being angry. I just aimed it better. "General," I said, "before we talk about the officer, somebody needs to explain to me why there was a welfare check on my house 2 weeks ago. Why there was a report today of a confused man matching my description when I have never been confused a day in my life. Somebody set this table long before Officer Vance sat down at it. I want to know who." And that is when I saw the car I had missed. Parked across the street, half a block down, a gray sedan that did not belong to the guard or the police. A man in a suit stood beside it with a phone to his ear, and even from that distance, even without my glasses, I knew the shape of my own nephew, Terrence. He had come to watch. He had come to make sure it happened the way it was supposed to happen. An old man causing a scene, resisting an officer, proof at last that Elijah Monroe could not be trusted with a house or a boy or himself. Instead, he was watching 15 military trucks and a general on one knee, and the whole scheme was dying in front of him in real time. I got up off that curb. My legs did not want to, but I made them. And I walked across Delmore Street through a corridor of soldiers who parted for me, and I stood in front of my brother's son. "Tell me it wasn't you," I said. He could not. It came out of him in pieces over the next hour, and more over the next weeks, but I will give it to you straight so you are not left wondering. Terrence was in debt. Bad debt, the kind that does not care that you are family. Halloran and Reeve had bought his debt quietly and then made him an offer. Deliver the last 2 holdouts on Delmore Street, my house and Amir's corner, and the debt disappears. They did not tell him to have his uncle slapped. They are not that clumsy. What they told him to do was build a file. Make the old man look unfit. A welfare check here. An anonymous concern there. A whisper to the county that maybe a grieving 68-year-old with a heart condition should not have sole custody of a boy. Get a judge worried. Get the guardianship stalled. And a scared old man might just sign the papers and move somewhere with an elevator. He never meant for it to go this far. They never do. But intentions do not stop machines once they are running, and the machine he started put a patrol car in my path at a gas station on a Saturday morning with the anniversary of a dead man's death sitting in the driver's seat. I was going to fix it, Terrence said, and he was crying now, this grown man in an expensive suit. The money, Uncle Eli, they had me. I was going to make sure the custody thing went away once the sale closed. I never wanted. You never wanted to look, I said. That is different from not wanting. Here is where the story could have ended the way you expect. General with a star, 60 soldiers, 3 police officers caught on camera. A corporate scheme exposed. You expect the hammer. But I have carried a hammer. I know what it costs the man who swings it, and I know it does not build anything. So here is what actually happened, and it is smaller and truer than revenge. The general did not arrest anyone. He had no authority to, and he knew it, and he was too good an officer to pretend otherwise. What he did was stand there, a witness with 2 stars and no jurisdiction, and let the videos and the trucks do the only thing they needed to do, which was make it impossible for anyone to sweep this under a rug. Chief Loretta Briggs arrived 20 minutes in, and to her enormous credit, she did not circle the wagons. She had seen the same videos everyone else had already spreading. She relieved Officer Vance of duty on the spot and opened an internal investigation. Not a firing. An investigation done right on the record, the slow, correct way that actually holds up. I asked her for that specifically. A firing that afternoon would have felt wonderful and would have been overturned by a union arbitrator in a year. A clean, documented process would not. Corey Vance was suspended without pay. The investigation found what the video showed, and he was not returned to patrol. But I asked the chief for one more thing, and it surprised her, and it surprised me while I was saying it. I asked to talk to him. Not to yell. To talk. Weeks later, in a bare room with bad coffee, Corey Vance sat across from me, and for a long time neither of us said anything. Then I asked him about his partner. And this man who had slapped me at a gas station put his face in his hands and told me about a night 300 miles away, and a jacket and a hand reaching in, and how he had not been able to sleep since without seeing it. He was not a monster. He was a wound that had been handed a badge and a gun and told to go be fine. Nobody made him get help. Nobody made him stop. They just moved him to a smaller town and hoped. I did not forgive him that day in the room. Forgiveness is not a thing you owe on a schedule. But I told him something I believe. You did not slap me because I am old and black and you are young and afraid, though all of that was in the room. You slapped me because somebody let you walk around broken and armed for 8 months and called it policing. That is bigger than you and me. I am going to spend some of what happened to me making sure they stop doing that. If you want, you can spend some of yours the same way. Or you can spend it feeling sorry, which helps nobody, least of all your partner. He is not on the force anymore. Last I heard he was doing peer support work with a veterans group, sitting with men who reach into jackets in their sleep. I do not know if it lasts. People are not stories, they do not tidy up. But it is more than I expected, and less than I feared, which is about the most you can honestly hope for from anyone. Halloran and Reeve pulled out of Delmore Street within a month. Not because of the law, because of the cameras. A development company can survive a lot, but it cannot survive 15 military trucks and a viral video and the words assaulted a decorated veteran to force a land sale trending under its name. The old mill stayed a ruin a while longer, and my street stayed my street, cracked sidewalks and leaning fences and all. I have never been so glad to keep something ugly. Terrence paid the company's debt off himself, every cent, working 2 jobs, and I let him. That is its own kind of mercy, letting a man carry what he earned instead of taking it from him. He comes by Sundays now. It is not the same. It may never be the same. But he shows up and he looks now. He looks right at me. That is the difference between him and the man he was, and it is the only difference that was ever going to matter. And the folder, the guardianship papers, scattered on the wet concrete of Haddad Station. Staff Sergeant Wesley Cole picked them up. Every page. He dried them against his uniform and stacked them and handed them back to me the way he had handed me my glasses, with 2 hands. On Monday morning, General Calder drove me to the courthouse himself, in that plain green sedan, and stood beside me while I filed them, and the clerk's hand shook a little as she stamped them, because word travels and everyone in that building knew. Permanent. Sealed. Unbreakable. No developer, no anonymous call, no scared judge would ever question who Malik belonged to again. He turned 11 that Sunday. I made the cake again, less badly. His name in blue, only a little crooked. I did not tell him the whole story that day. I told him there had been trouble, that some soldiers had helped, that his grandfather was fine. He is 11. He does not need the weight of it yet. But I taped one new thing inside the front window next to his old drawing of the 2 of us under the lopsided sun. It is a photograph. 60 soldiers standing at attention on a gas station corner, and an old man on a curb and a general on one knee. When Malik is old enough, he will ask about it. And I will tell him that the day the world finally put an army behind me, the most important thing I did was decide what not to do with it. Because here is what half a century taught me, and what I want to leave you with. Power is not the test. Everybody thinks the test is what you do when you are powerless, when they are slapping you at a gas station and no one is coming. That is not the test. Anybody can be decent when they have no other option. The real test is the 12 minutes after the trucks arrive. The test is what kind of man you are when, for once, you could do anything, and everyone is waiting to see if you will finally become the thing that was done to you. I have spent my whole life being told to move along. And on the one day I did not have to, I chose to build something instead of burn something. Not because I am a saint. I wanted to burn it all down. I chose the other thing because a boy across town was going to grow up watching me, and I decided what he was going to see. So let me ask you, and I really do want to know, so tell me in the comments. If 15 trucks and 60 soldiers and a general on one knee were suddenly standing behind you, waiting for your word, on the worst and most unfair day of your life, would you have been able to put the hammer down? Be honest. I am still not sure I would have, if not for the boy. I will read every answer.